I stood at the altar, fists clenched, heart hammering so violently I was sure the microphone would pick it up. The grand cathedral, filled with over 200 guests, held its breath in anticipation. This was the day I had poured my heart, soul and savings into the perfect wedding Celeste had dreamed of. Every detail, every moment had led to this. Then she said it. "I can't do this." The words sliced through the silence like a blade. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. My breath hitched, my vision blurred for a fraction of a second. Had I misheard? Celeste took a step back, her expression composed, smug even. "I can't do this," she repeated, louder this time. "My new husband will take your place now. Why don't you join the audience?" A sickening chill ran down my spine as a figure stepped forward from the crowd. Brandon, my best friend, my best man. He smirked as he took Celeste's hand, standing beside her as if he belonged there. The betrayal sank its claws into me, paralyzing me. But what twisted the knife deeper was the laughter, her parents' laughter. They had known. They had planned this. I felt the guests' eyes darting between us, waiting for my reaction. Rage boiled beneath my skin, an urge to scream, to demand answers, to fight. But then, something shifted. I saw the expectation in their eyes, the anticipation of my breakdown, and I refused to give it to them. So I smiled, not a broken, desperate smile, but one of cold amusement. I nodded. "By all means," I said smoothly, stepping back. "The stage is yours." A flicker of uncertainty crossed Celeste's face. Brandon's confidence wavered. The guests murmured, some shifting uncomfortably, others stifling awkward laughter. I turned, walked down the steps, and took a seat in the front row, arms folded, watching as if this was just another show. Silence stretched. Celeste swallowed. Brandon shifted. This was not how it was supposed to go. They had expected humiliation, a spectacle, me broken at their feet. Instead, they were the ones under the spotlight, their grand betrayal turning sour. Brandon forced a chuckle. "Hey, man, no hard feelings, right?" I tilted my head, my smile widening just a fraction. "None at all, Brandon." Murmurs grew louder. Some guests exchanged disgusted glances, while others stared at me with something almost like admiration. Celeste's mother cleared her throat, forcing another laugh. "Well, what matters is that our daughter followed her heart." But no one was laughing anymore. I let the silence stretch, let them stew in it. Because in that moment, I saw it all. Clearly, the ignored warnings, the subtle betrayals, the messages I had found just the night before on Celeste's forgotten phone. Tomorrow's the big day. Are you ready? Of course. It's going to be perfect. He has no idea. I had known. Deep down, I had known. And yet, I had let myself be the fool who paid for his own humiliation, but I wouldn't be their fool any longer. I leaned back in my seat, watching the tension tighten around them. "Go ahead," I said, my voice carrying through the hushed cathedral. "I'd love to see how this turns out." And just like that, the power shifted. They weren't in control anymore. I was. I let her believe everything was fine. I walked into my wedding day fully aware of what was coming. And as I watched them squirm, I realized I had already won. The wedding hall fell into chaos the moment the first message appeared on the giant screen behind the altar. The once joyful atmosphere evaporated, replaced by a thick, suffocating tension. Celeste, radiant in the gown I paid for, stood frozen. Brandon, standing beside her, went rigid. I remained seated, watching as the messages continued flashing across the screen. Celeste, "I can't believe we're actually doing this." Brandon, "He's too clueless to even suspect a thing." Celeste, "Once we're married, his money will be ours." He'll never see it coming. A collective gasp filled the room. Murmurs turned to outright whispers. Celeste's mother covered her mouth in shock, her father's face dark with rage. Celeste turned to me, panic in her eyes. "Turn it off!" she hissed. I tilted my head. "Why? This is your love story, isn't it? Shouldn't everyone hear it?" More messages appeared, evidence of their betrayal. But the final dagger was a message Celeste hadn't seen, one from Brandon to another woman. His real fiancée? Celeste stiffened, color draining from her face as she turned to him. "Brandon," she whispered. Brandon stammered, eyes darting around. "This isn't what it looks like." But it was exactly that. Her father stood, voice trembling with rage. "You humiliated us," Celeste sobbed. I can fix this." Her father laughed coldly. "Fix this? You humiliated our family for a man who was using you. You're on your own now." Celeste froze. "Dad, what are you saying?" "I'm saying you're not my daughter anymore." Her world shattered. Her boss, the woman she had spent years trying to impress, stood up. "I can't have someone like you representing my company. Consider yourself unemployed." Celeste collapsed in a fit of sobs. Meanwhile, Brandon's phone rang. He answered, hopeful, until his face drained of color. "No, wait, I can explain." But his business partners weren't listening. They were pulling out. His company, his lifeline, was dead. Celeste and Brandon were finished. And me? I walked away, untouched. Weeks passed. My life flourished while theirs crumbled. Celeste lost her job. Brandon left the city, his reputation in ruins. Then, one evening, there was a knock on my door. Celeste stood there, a ghost of her former self. "Please," she whispered. "I made a mistake." I held up a hand. "No, Celeste, you made a choice." Her lip trembled. "But I live with it." And I closed the door in her face. That was the last time I saw her, because my best revenge wasn't their suffering. It was the fact that I didn't care anymore. I was thriving, and that was the best revenge of all.